Arnold comes out and says, hey, next year, the winner of this contest is getting $500,000. Makes it the first bodybuilding contest to have a cash prize of $500,000.
The one thing about Hooper is that he's such a calculated strongman in ways that like no other athlete in the sport ever really has been. And everything that Hooper said is exactly what then happened. He just peered into the future, and then that is the reality that we lived in.
Wesley Vissers, I'm not gonna say he came out of nowhere, but he finished in 7th place last year.
We're looking at the Olympia and going, wait a minute, okay, well, we know what the top 4 was, but now Vissers is in the mix, and it's like, is Vissers actually gonna be standing next to Bumstead in final call-out?
Hey folks, welcome to Strength Weekly, the weekly internet show that gives you the full rundown of everything you need to know around the barbell game. I'm one of your co-hosts, David Thomas Town. I'm joined by the much more intrepid Philip Bleckman. We have a lot to cover this week. A quick reminder, go ahead and subscribe to Barbend on YouTube. You're watching already. Give us that subscription, that sweet, sweet subscription. It also gives us validation. We got a lot to cover this week because the Arnold is done. The yearly sports festival fitness expo series of competitions in Columbus, Ohio happened. Phil, what a weekend it was. How are you feeling after all that coverage?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling tired, but excited. There were a lot of standout performances. We called a bunch of things right, but we also called a bunch of things wrong, which I'm very excited to get into because I love it when that happens. So yeah, it was a big contest for both bodybuilding and strongmen and strongwomen. So a lot to talk about today.
Well, let's get to the run of show because it's what the people want. First up, we're covering the men's open bodybuilding division. Hadi Choopan of Iran takes the win. Mitchell Hooper, the Canadian strongman, forced defends his title and repeats as the Arnold Strongman Classic champion. We also talk about how Hafthor Bjornsson did, and actually that is one thing that Phil and I basically predicted almost exactly correctly. We're talking about strong woman Lucy Underdown pulling a new elephant bar deadlift record, 666. It's not the mark of the beast, it's the new women's elephant bar deadlift record. We're going to talk about why that's important. Finally, Wesley Vissers' huge upset in the men's classic physique competition. Maybe the biggest upset of the weekend. Was it the biggest upset of the weekend, Phil?
I would say so. I think that is the mark of, it was clear that those guys were the top 2 based on the final callouts, but like even the commentary team was just like, you know, Ramon's too good. His waist is too tight. Like, there's just no way.
Don't give it away, Phil. We're going to go into that.
We're going to go into it. We're going into it. Sorry. We're going into it. All right.
This is called foreshadowing. Okay, without further ado, let's get into it. Phil, we got to talk about the men's open bodybuilding division because a lot happened. Not only about who won, but the contest itself, the battle itself between Hadi and Samson. Samson's such a good name for a bodybuilder. I still can't get over that.
Samson Dauda. Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger making an historic, maybe game-changing announcement. Maybe it might change bodybuilding as we know it. Let's talk about the 2 men at the top, okay? You got Samson and Hadi. Phil, Hadi Choopan, give us a quick recap of his last 3 years in bodybuilding. For those who have been living under a rock.
Okay, so we all remember when Big Ramy was the Mr. Olympia, right? Big Ramy went back-to-back at the Olympia, but his second year, Hadi Choopan came up onto the top of the scene, and everybody in Big Ramy's second win thought that year was the year Hadi should have won. His conditioning was on point. He has a midsection like nobody else in the game, and it was arguable in the same way that when Big Ramy won his first title, that Hadi should have won his first title a year before he actually did. So there was discrepancy there. Then the following year, Hadi gets the win. And then this past year, he loses the title to Derek Lunsford in a debatable contest where you could have argued for either guy because they had strengths, both Lunsford and Hadi at the top. And then in third place, right behind them, both behind Lunsford and Choopan, was Samson Dauda in third place at the 2023 Olympia. So because Hadi didn't win at the Olympia, he's like, okay, I actually have to come back and make my presence known so that I can build some momentum to try and challenge Lunsford again to reclaim the title in 2024. So he's like, all right, I'm going to compete at the Arnold Classic. So it's the second and third place finishers at the 2023 Olympia clashing again at the Arnold Classic in Columbus this past weekend.
I was going to say one additional ripple is that Samson Dauda, he took the Arnold Classic title in 2023, surprised a lot of people, brought an insanely good package to the stage. He was not someone the experts called to take the title in 2023, the Arnold Classic title, right? And it really thrust him onto the scene as a potential Olympia contender. He goes on to podium at the Olympia. So for him, he's trying to defend his Arnold Classic title. Hadi, coming out hot, wants to regain the Olympia, and a good way to build momentum doing that is to compete in the Arnold Classic. We often see Olympia winners in the men's open division not compete in the Arnold Classic the following year, right? A great example, Derek Lunsford not competing in the Arnold Classic the year after he won the Olympia, just focusing on repeating as Mr. Olympia. Hadi, he's back. He's going to do 2 comps this year, right? He's going to do the Arnold Classic and the Olympia. So, and Hadi, he brings an insane package.
Hadi brings an unbelievably conditioned package, and that's what sets him apart. So the difference, though, between Dauda and Choopan at this contest really came down to just conditioning. I mean, they're both extremely muscularly dense through all of their posing. The real difference maker is Choopan has the absolute most insane conditioning of anybody in the division. His serratus pose, like during anything that's abdominals, it's just like carved all the way through, like down his entire midsection. And I think that that's what set him apart here, because the eye continuously gets drawn to that conditioning that Choopan brings. Now, on your comment before about like how the Olympian champion doesn't often compete at other shows outside of the Olympia, that's twofold. One is because it's really hard to get down to competition shape multiple times throughout a season. Like, it is very hard to go through a prep and recover and do all that. Like, it's tough on the body. But secondly, if you miss, right? Like, if a champion comes in and is just like slightly off the mark and loses it, it's like, okay, well, what does that mean for them? You know, like, this is a subjective sport. You don't want to carry that kind of stuff. So it is a gamble to compete outside of the Olympia if you are the Olympia champion.
A couple additional awards that were actually given out before the winner was announced. Hadi won the Franco Colombo Most Muscular Award. The Most Muscular Award often rewards the guy who shows up with the most muscularity, the greatest amount of muscularity relative to their frame. Samson Dauda won the Ed Corney Best Poser Award. Top 2 guys swept all the awards. They swept 1 and 2, and then they swept Most Muscular and Best Poser. Really shows the level of competition that these guys brought against each other, and that they really stood out from the pack. So Hadi wins $300,000. Arnold comes out and says, hey, next year, the winner of this contest is getting $500,000, which makes it the richest purse in bodybuilding history, makes it the first bodybuilding contest to have a cash prize of $500,000. And guess what? Unless something changes at the Olympia, it makes it a richer purse than the Olympia, because right now, Mr. Olympia gets $400K.
Yeah, to caveat, it is $500,000 to the men's open winner. There will be increases in the other divisions as well, but the only number that we've actually confirmed and heard from Arnold himself is the men's open winner gets $500K as opposed to the $300K that Dauda won last year and that Choopan won this year. And yeah, $400K for the Mr. Olympia title, which has been standard for some number of years now.
Arnold's not shy about much these days. He's challenging the Olympia and saying, we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're going to make this the richest prize in bodybuilding. And maybe what that does is it increases the incentive for the reigning Mr. Olympia. Maybe it incentivizes them to compete at the Arnold, right? So we don't know exactly what's going to happen here, but it's a really big statement by Arnold and event organizers.
David, I have a question for you. If Arnold is coming at the Olympia saying that he wants the Arnold Classic to compete, if not be the top show in bodybuilding, the argument from the Olympia side pretty much has to just be, well, you can't be the top contest in bodybuilding if you're only covering 7 of 11 IFBB Pro divisions. Where's the stance on that? How should the Arnold Classic navigate that? Can they ever be the top show if they're not covering all 11 divisions? Or are the other athletes, if they want to compete at the show, just going to have to figure out where they slot into the 7 that they do actually cover?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Phil. I think there's something to be said here for Arnold on stage only announcing the increase for the men's open division. It seems to me like he's saying we're focused on making this contest, the men's open contest, one of 7 bodybuilding divisions that are contested at the Arnold, making this the premier men's open, and maybe the others follow over time, right? But I think it's telling that classic physique, men's classic physique, has quickly become maybe the most popular division of bodybuilding, and the prize purse at the Arnold for classic physique is relatively small compared to men's open. And Arnold has actually said that he thinks classic physique is the future of bodybuilding, right? He says that, but he didn't come out and say that during the classic physique and say, oh, we're going to have this big prize pool for classic physique. He's only saying it for the men's open. And I think what he's trying to do is trying to position the Arnold as maybe the premier bodybuilding competition for this one division first. So I think he's focused on kind of conquering that his Everest, and then you get the other mountains as well after that. That's my take. That's a great question.
It's a good take. Yeah, when he announced it, and it's like, okay, the argument is the Arnold Classic going to become the biggest contest? The immediate argument back is you can't be the top contest if you don't cover all of the divisions that are, part of the IFBB Pro. So it's like that. I think that there's some debate there, but I think that your take makes a lot of sense. It's exciting. It's an exciting time, but it's open ended.
Well, let's move on. We got to move on to another sport where the competitions are kind of duking it out for who's number one, and that is strongman. Men's Open Strongman. Mitchell Hooper repeats as Arnold Strongman Classic champion. He's also the reigning world's strongest man. He's on a bit of it. He's not undefeated. He's not undefeated in competition over the last year. That's certainly
just hasn't missed a podium.
Mitchell Hooper put on a really interesting performance. We're going to talk about Mitchell Hooper, then we're going to talk about everyone else. Mitchell Hooper we have seen him kind of fall into this pattern. You've identified this, Phil, where he takes an early lead and then uses his gamesmanship and planning to maintain that lead over the course of a weekend. Did not happen here. He had some serious ground to make up heading into day 2 of competition. Phil, can you give us the Cliff's Notes, the short version of Hooper's trajectory back to the top of the podium and defending his title?
Yeah, serious ground is variable because for Hooper, it's less significant than it would be for any other athlete in the game right now. The one thing about Hooper is that he's such a calculated strongman in ways that like no other athlete in the sport ever really has been, where he's just so open about his calculations and then he just so effectively executes on those calculations. So when you go into the max elephant bar deadlift, which is the opening event, Hafthor Bjornsson is coming back to his competitive strongman days. He is the world record holder in the event at 474 kilograms, and it is expected that he will still be a very good deadlifter in that event, if not win that event outright, because it's where his strength has been forever, even though he's coming back and he's putting on weight and all this stuff. Hooper knows that it's unlikely that he's going to contend for top points in the elephant bar deadlift. So he gets 3rd place in the elephant bar deadlift. Bobby Thompson, also an incredible static deadlifter, he comes out, he only does 1 attempt. His opening attempt gets him 2nd place points. Very impressive. And then Bjornsson works his way up, easily scores 1st place in the max elephant bar deadlift. Everybody speculated, could he have broken the world record? It seemed like had he just loaded over the world record, he would have had that and then some. Like it was not close in the elephant bar. But that said, then they went into the timber carry. And this is the first part where Hooper's expectation was adjusted a bit to say. So Hooper is excellent in this event. He's going up against Mateusz Kaliszkowski, who has the world record in the event from a couple years ago. He scored it in 7 seconds, which is an insanely fast time. But then the last time that Bjornsson did the timber carry, it did not go well. He did not have the proper leverage points. It was ugly. It did not look good for Bjornsson. So if you're only able to look at past performances in this event, you would think that this is a weak spot for Bjornsson. Not this year. Boy, Bjornsson blitzed this time on the timber carry. Now, Mitchell Hooper still effectively did what he wanted to do. He came within 1/10 of a second of matching Kaliszkowski's world record, which is an insanely fast time. And Kaliszkowski still put up a sub 9-second score for 3rd place in the event. But Bjornsson got 2nd place in the timber carry, and that was a surprise. That was the first real big surprise of the Strongman weekend, was that, not only is Bjornsson back, but he's improved. And that's where, when I saw that, I was like, you and I, thinking that Bjornsson was not going to podium, I was like, maybe we're way wrong. That was the one moment where that was the big surprise. The timber carry was the big surprise. So Bjornsson has 1st place points going into day 2 of competition. Hooper is still in the mix. He's at the top because he has a 3rd place and a 1st place in the first 2 events. It's only a 5-event, 2-day contest. But then Hooper's talking to the commentary team afterwards, saying, "Hey, Hooper, what's your plan? What's your rundown? Give us the skinny." And Hooper's like, "Well, we all knew that Bjornsson was going to win the deadlift. That's not a surprise. But we were not expecting the timber carry. However, going into day 2, I expect to have the best day I've ever had because these are the events that I've been planning for. And I think you're going to see me have the best performance I've ever had on the Apollon's wheels, which was the 4th event of the competition." And everything that Hooper said is exactly what then happened. He just peered into the future. And then that is the reality that we lived in. Hooper won 3 consecutive events. He won the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th event. And in the 5th event, he had such a lead that he only needed to beat Bjornsson in order to secure it. And it wasn't close. So it was tight. But then day 2, Bjornsson sort of fell off. to the point where he lost out on his podium position. But everything that Hooper said was just exactly right. And that's what he does at every single contest he's in. He just knows where he is, and he has no ego about it. He's like, I'm best at this. I'm not at this. I'm best at this. I'm not at this. And he knows where everybody else is. So he calibrates where everybody else is and goes, okay, well, if they're going to get this many points, then I need to get this many points. He just has it down. He's going to be really tough to beat going forward.
Well, Hooper defends. Hafthor finishes in 4th place, right around the middle of the pack, which Phil and I correctly predicted. Just throwing it out there for the haters.
By a half point, though. He only lost by a half point. By a half point. It's way better than we thought. Way better than we thought.
Yeah. Hooper finishes in 1st. Mateusz Kielskowski, someone whose career has been derailed by injuries multiple times, by the way, finishes in an impressive 2nd place, and then Tom Stoltman in 3rd place. Right. Hafthor close by, nipping at Stoltman's heels in 4th. One name I want to point out that did not perform like we maybe expected, Martins Licis. Martins is, by the way, one of the funniest people I've ever interacted with, like, period, not even in strength sports. And he immediately took to social media and had the meme ready for like what he admitted is a subpar performance. Right? When he's on, he's on. And when he's off. And he came out and said, you know what, guys, I was off. Did not finish where I wanted to finish. Martins is someone we routinely expect to see in the top 5 of the
expect to see him on the podium. Yeah.
Expect to see him on the podium. Didn't crack it this year. Let's move on over to the women's strongman or strong woman side. 2 big things. Had trouble figuring out which we wanted to lead with. I do want to talk about Lucy Underdown's world record elephant bar deadlift, 666 pounds. Underdown finished in 3rd overall in the competition, right? But obviously kicking things off at the elephant bar deadlift is exciting. A couple things we should know in the elephant bar deadlift. This is an event unique to strongman. The bar is whippy. It is lengthier than a normal barbell. The plates used are wider than a normal barbell. That changes the weight distribution. The elephant bar is designed such that you can pull more. Most people can lift more with an elephant bar because the weight distribution is different than they can with a standard deadlift bar. And we generally tend to see overall heavier deadlifts on the elephant bar than a standard bar. Hilariously, though, for both the men and women, the world record pulls are not heavier on the elephant bar, but that might just be because competition standards or competition circumstances haven't, you know what I mean? But like in theory, most people can pull more on an elephant bar. So let's just get that out of the way. Underdown pulls 666 pounds. Underdown is the 2023 Europe's Strongest Woman Champion. Comes out of the gate swinging, sets a new world record, 15 pounds heavier than Victoria Long's elephant bar deadlift. So a pretty significant bump up, 15 pounds. Underdown finishes in 3rd overall in the full competition. Phil, let's talk about who won the competition.
Yeah, so Angelica Jardine, in her debut, wins. And nobody foresaw this being the result. And I think it's because if you were looking at this contest like we were ahead of time, it was really hard to place your chips anywhere other than Victoria Long defending because she was so good in 2023. But like looking at this year, unfortunately, Victoria Long got injured. She injured her hamstring in the elephant bar deadlift, which she set the world record in last year. It was one of those times where, as a spectator, you're like, well, we had an expectation going in. That got upended by an injury. And what happens now? You see Underdown pull the deadlift world record. We're like, well, she's the front runner. But then Thompson has a remarkable day 1. You're like, well, she's unbeatable. And then Jardine on day 2, just, wait a minute, who is this? And now it's just like, is Jardine just like a front runner to win any contest she's in now? Because like, it was impressive. She was impressive.
Jardine's win, I don't want to say out of nowhere, because like all of these people should be on our radar. Like this is a very elite contest. Not just anyone can qualify. But it actually reminds me of Alexei Novikov's World's Strongest Man win, where a lot of people were surprised, and suddenly you're heading into the final or the final couple events, and you're like, sorry, who? Who's this? You know, now Novikov is a player in the space. And I wonder if that's what we're going to see from Angelica Jardine. But it just kind of reminded me of Alexei Novikov's World's Strongest Man win from a few years ago.
Exactly. I think the Novikov analogy is pretty strong with Jardine because, like, now my eye is going to be on her for every contest she's entered as, like, okay, that's a podium contender.
Well, I'm thrilled I got the Phil Bleckman seal of approval. Let's move on to maybe the biggest upset of the weekend. So let's talk about the classic physique contest. Wesley Vissers. I'm not going to say he came out of nowhere, but he finished in 7th place last year. Guess what he finished this year? 1st. And the heavy front runner. Phil, let's talk about the heavy front runner coming into this contest.
Yeah, I mean, Ramon Dino has been the front runner outside of Bumstead, he's been the top guy in the classic physique division for the past 2 years. He's been the runner-up at the Olympia to Bumstead. And Bumstead, as we talked about before, he's just like, if Bumstead ever loses, that would be the shock of the century in this sport, because he is the standard of the division. The physique that they base everyone else off of is exactly Bumstead's physique. So to beat what the judges are templating off of is just, I mean, it seems unfathomable. But Ramon has been the top guy next to Bumstead as the top two, like clear ahead of everybody else for the past 2 years. Vissers has been in the mix, but he's been outside the top four. The top four of the last 2 years has been very steadily Bumstead, Ramon, Urs Kalasinski, and Brian, and they've been in that order pretty steadily all the way through. And Vissers was on the outside looking in, but he was always in the mix. He's in the top 6. He's in the top 7. And then Vissers is in the final call out against Ramon in prejudging, and everybody's like, what is happening? What is going on? Is this Vissers' time? Because he leapfrogged over Urs. And those guys trained together. So Urs is still in the same spot that he was, but Vissers leapfrogs, and everybody is like, wait a minute, what is happening? Is this a huge shakeup? Wesley came in bigger. He had a different way of posing to like hide the fact that his waist is just naturally wider than Ramon's is. Ramon's has a very, very naturally narrow waist, which helps emphasize the X frame of his physique. Vissers changed up his posing to like help maintain that bigger X frame. He also came in as just the bigger guy. And so now what we were talking about before of how momentum and optics mean a lot in a subjective sport, we're looking at the Olympia and going, wait a minute. Okay, well, we know what the top four was, but now Vissers is in the mix. And it's like, is Vissers actually going to be standing next to Bumstead in final callouts? Like, what do we expect now for the Olympia?
Vissers, being the Arnold champion, throws an interesting variable, and we might see a mix-up because we have not seen the top tier at the Olympia in men's classic physique change at all the last 2 years. The ordering's been the same. It's been the same story. It's been exciting, right? The journey to get there has been exciting and noteworthy and watchable. But now Vissers is in the conference like that. This is it. I like this. Ramon finishes in second place, right? But suddenly, again, you talk about like champions potentially losing momentum. Ramon always kind of has used the last couple of years the Arnold Classic as a way to build momentum, winning that. Okay, he's the challenger to Bumstead. Now is Vissers the challenger to Bumstead? Has Ramon lost momentum from getting in second place here? It's super fascinating.
I think that when you looked at the top three from the last couple of years at the Olympia, it was always Urs in third, but behind Ramon and Bumstead. And there was always talk of like, we've covered Urs pretty significantly on barbell. And there's been times where it's like, okay, this dude is got so much mass that it's like, this dude should just go up to the men's open because he's carrying so much muscle. He actually has to like drop muscle in order to make weight. And so it was just assumed that if Ramon wasn't actually going to take the title from Bumstead, that Urs was like sort of next in line to like challenge for the throne as he made progress. And so to see that in Urs is like still holding his spot, but that Vissers just leapfrogged over everybody, that like shows the significant difference that he was able to bring in his package. And that's really where this big shakeup is, because if a shakeup was going to happen, we also had an expectation of what that shakeup might look like. And that shakeup is now happening, but it's not what we were expecting. And so that's why it's also more shocking, because the person that beat Ramon wasn't Urs.
Also want to point out, Urs did finish in third and comes away with a Best Poser award. So, which is interesting because Vissers, what he did with his posing was really interesting. But Urs does take the Best Poser award and gets an additional 10K. So just want to point that out. Phil, the Olympia weekend is maybe going to be the most exciting one we've been going into for a while. There are tons more divisions we could cover. That's all we have time for in Strength Weekly. For Barbend.com, I'm David Thomas Tell, joined by the expert of experts.
I'm Phil Blackman. Thank you so much for watching our Arnold Classic coverage on Barbend. If you missed out on any of it, it is still all live, and it is very exciting as we head into the rest of the bodybuilding season and the rest of the strongman and strongwomen season. This has been Strength Weekly. Thanks for watching.